Racist restaurant manager refuses service to black family, then faces shocking consequences. Ethan took a deep breath, savoring the warm evening air that hung in the parking lot. The sky above was painted with streaks of dusky orange and purple, casting a quiet, serene glow over everything. The sounds of families talking and kids laughing drifted across the lot, mingling with the faint hum of passing cars. It was a comforting background, grounding him in the moment as he looked over at his family. For Ethan, evenings like this, rare as they were, held a kind of simple magic. His wife, Lena, stepped out of the car and adjusted her purse over her shoulder, glancing at their two children, who were already a few steps ahead, caught up in their own excitement. Their daughter was eagerly pointing at the neon sign flickering over the restaurant entrance, its colors creating a soft glow that beckoned warmly, even though it was worn and starting to lose its vibrancy. Ethan could see the faint remnants of letters that once stood boldly but now faded, bearing witness to years of bustling patrons and busy evenings. Ethan walked beside Lena, their hands brushing before he gently took hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. She returned his smile, her eyes full of that quiet strength he so admired. They had come through a lot together, facing their share of struggles, both subtle and glaring, and yet moments like these reminded him of why they kept going, why they pushed through every challenge. This was their chance to create good memories for their children, to show them the importance of family, unity, and dignity, no matter what the world threw at them. Their kids were chatting animatedly about the dinner menu they'd memorized from the last visit. His son was especially thrilled about the ice cream bar, bouncing with excitement as he skipped alongside his sister. Ethan chuckled softly, his heart warmed by their innocence and joy. Seeing his children so happy, so unburdened, was a rare gift, and tonight, he wanted to protect that feeling, to let them revel in this little escape without a care. As they drew closer to the entrance, Ethan noticed a few glances in their direction. Some were brief, fleeting looks of mild curiosity, while others lingered just a bit longer. He felt the familiar, subtle prickle of being watched, of being noticed, but he shrugged it off. This was a moment for his family, and nothing was going to spoil it, not tonight. He led Lena and the kids forward, feeling a quiet resolve settle in his chest as they approached the glass doors, ready to step into the warmth and light of the bustling restaurant. As they stepped inside, the restaurant buzzed with activity. A warm, golden light filled the space, illuminating clusters of families and friends gathered around tables, their voices merging into a comforting hum of laughter, chatter, and the clinking of silverware. The restaurant walls were decorated with vintage posters and photos from decades past, creating a rustic charm that seemed to draw people in. The smell of sizzling food filled the air, freshly grilled steaks, crispy fries, and sweet, buttery rolls. The aroma alone made Ethan's stomach growl, reminding him just how much he'd been looking forward to this meal. Ethan held the door for his family, his kids rushing inside with wide eyes, thrilled by the bustling scene and the promise of good food. Lena followed closely behind, looking around with a soft smile. Her expression mirrored Ethan's, relief, excitement, a quiet joy that only came from sharing moments like these with the people who mattered most. They walked up to the host's stand, and Ethan took a deep breath, feeling a sense of pride as he looked at his family, his kids' faces filled with excitement. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Ethan saw her. The restaurant manager, a woman in her mid-40s with a severe expression, her blonde hair tied tightly in a bun, was watching them from across the room. Her smile, which had seemed friendly and polite as she greeted other patrons, faded the moment her eyes landed on them. Her lips tightened, and there was a flash of something sharp and unwelcoming in her gaze. Ethan's heart sank just slightly, but he pushed the feeling away. Tonight was about his family, and nothing was going to take that from him. The woman walked over, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She stopped in front of them, looking them up and down with an expression that was barely masked as polite. Her eyes were cold, and her tone carried an edge as she spoke, though she kept her smile in place. "Good evening. I'm Karen, the manager. How can I help you?" She looked at them as if assessing whether they belonged there. Ethan cleared his throat, keeping his tone calm and friendly. "Good evening, Karen. We'd like a table for 4, please," he said, smiling warmly despite her chilly demeanor. Karen's eyes flicked over his family, her smile tightening as she looked back at him. "I'm afraid we're fully booked for the evening," she said, her voice laced with false sympathy. "There might be a bit of a wait." She gestured to the crowded restaurant, but Ethan could see several empty tables scattered around. He knew better than to make assumptions, but her tone, her expression, it was all too familiar. He glanced over his shoulder, noticing other families being seated without hesitation, and he felt a wave of frustration simmer beneath his calm exterior. He forced himself to remain polite. "That's all right, we're happy to wait," he replied, maintaining his composure. Lena squeezed his hand gently, offering him a silent message of patience and understanding. They had encountered situations like this before, and they both knew the importance of staying calm and composed. Ethan took a steadying breath, determined not to let this spoil their night. Karen's smile wavered, and for a moment, there was a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, as if she had expected him to back down, to leave. She hesitated before responding, glancing over her shoulder at the empty tables, clearly aware that he had noticed. She pressed her lips together, her face settling into an expression that was almost defiant. "Well, we'll see what we can do," she replied curtly, tapping her fingers on the host stand. "But I can't promise anything. As I said, we're quite full tonight." Ethan nodded, his smile never faltering. "Thank you. We appreciate it." He looked down at his kids, who were patiently waiting beside him, their eyes still filled with excitement for the evening ahead. He refused to let them see his frustration. They deserved a night without tension or worry. Karen gave a short, insincere nod and turned on her heel, muttering something under her breath as she walked away. Ethan watched her go, feeling Lena's hand tighten around his. He looked down at her, seeing the hint of worry in her eyes, and gave her a reassuring smile. They were used to this, but that didn't make it any easier. They had both learned how to handle these moments with grace, to hold their heads high, but there was always a part of him that felt the sting of these encounters. A few minutes passed, and other families continued to be seated. Ethan glanced at the clock, realizing they had been waiting much longer than necessary. His kids shifted restlessly, and he leaned down, offering them a comforting smile. "We'll be at our table soon, I promise," he whispered, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it himself. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Karen returned. She looked at them with thinly veiled irritation, as if their very presence was an inconvenience to her. "Follow me," she said curtly, not bothering to wait for a response as she turned and walked toward a small table in the far corner of the restaurant. It was away from the main seating area, partially hidden behind a pillar. Ethan felt a pang of disappointment but swallowed it, following her with his family in tow. As they sat down, Karen placed the menus on the table with a hasty, almost dismissive motion. "Your server will be with you shortly," she said, her voice dripping with impatience. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, leaving them alone. Ethan watched her go, his jaw tightening as he took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm for his family's sake. Lena reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "Don't let her get to you," she said softly, her eyes filled with empathy and understanding. "We're here together, and that's what matters." Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for her steady presence. She had always been his rock, his source of strength, and in moments like this, he was reminded of just how much he valued her resilience. Their server arrived shortly, a young woman who greeted them with a genuine smile and a friendly tone. She took their order without any hint of the hostility Karen had shown, and for a moment, Ethan felt his tension ease. He glanced at his kids, who were happily chatting about the food they were going to order, oblivious to the tension that lingered in the air. As they waited for their food, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of Karen's eyes on them. He glanced up occasionally, catching glimpses of her watching them from across the room, her expression a mix of disdain and suspicion. She didn't try to hide it, her gaze openly judgmental, as if she was waiting for them to do something wrong. Ethan clenched his fists under the table, his patience wearing thin, but he reminded himself of the importance of setting an example for his children. This was not the time or place to lose his composure. Time passed, and their food arrived, though the experience was overshadowed by the hostile energy that seemed to permeate the air. Karen's glances were relentless, her disapproval as clear as day. Every time Ethan tried to immerse himself in his family's laughter and conversation, he felt her presence, like a dark cloud hanging over their table. It was as if she was daring him to react, waiting for him to step out of line so she could justify her behavior. But Ethan held his ground. He focused on his family, on the joy in his children's faces as they enjoyed their food, and on Lena's quiet strength that kept him anchored. This was their night, and he refused to let anyone take that from them. Just as they were finishing their meal, Karen approached their table again, her expression colder than before. She looked at Ethan with a challenging stare, her voice laced with thinly veiled contempt. "Is everything satisfactory?" she asked, though it was clear she didn't actually care about the answer. Ethan met her gaze, his own expression calm but unwavering. "Yes, thank you," he replied, his voice steady, refusing to give her the reaction she seemed to want. Karen lingered for a moment longer than necessary, as if waiting for Ethan to add something else, to give her an excuse to comment further. But Ethan simply returned her stare, his calm, steady gaze meeting her icy glare with quiet defiance. After a tense moment, she turned on her heel and walked away, muttering something under her breath. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling a slight knot of tension in his chest begin to unravel. Lena reached over, brushing her fingers against his hand. She gave him a small smile that said everything he needed to hear without a single word spoken. "We're here together. We'll get through this." Their kids, blissfully unaware of the tension hovering around them, were still chatting away, excitedly discussing dessert options. His daughter was particularly insistent on getting the biggest slice of chocolate cake the restaurant had to offer, her eyes sparkling as she animatedly described it. Ethan couldn't help but smile at her excitement. He reminded himself that these moments, these little memories with his family, were what mattered most. He could handle anything, he thought, as long as he had these moments to hold on to. But the peace was short-lived. Just as they had decided on dessert, Karen reappeared. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought along a younger employee, a tall, lanky man with an uncertain expression. He kept glancing between Karen and Ethan, his discomfort clear as he shifted from foot to foot, trying to look anywhere but directly at Ethan's family. Karen cleared her throat, her voice sharper than before. "Sir," she began, her tone forced and overly polite, "I have some concerns about your behavior in our establishment tonight." Ethan felt a surge of anger rise up, but he quickly reined it in, keeping his face neutral. He looked her in the eye, feeling the weight of every condescending word she spoke. "My behavior?" he asked, his tone calm but unmistakably firm. Lena glanced between them, a flicker of worry in her eyes, and even the kids had fallen silent, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Yes," Karen replied, crossing her arms as she glanced at her colleague, seemingly hoping for backup. "We've had some complaints that you and your family have been making other guests uncomfortable." Her words hung in the air, each one chosen with precision to carry an insult without saying it outright. "We strive to keep this establishment a comfortable place for everyone." Ethan took a steadying breath, forcing himself to remain composed. He knew exactly what she meant, but he refused to let her drag him down to her level. "Karen," he began, keeping his tone even, "we've been nothing but respectful since we walked in. My family and I came here to have a meal, just like everyone else. If there's an issue, I'd appreciate if you'd address it directly, instead of making vague accusations." The young employee standing beside her looked increasingly uncomfortable, his eyes darting nervously between Karen and Ethan, clearly wanting no part in the conversation. Karen, however, seemed determined to press forward, her lips curling into a tight, forced smile. "Sir, I'm only addressing the concerns that have been brought to my attention," she replied, her voice dripping with condescension. "We just want to make sure everyone is enjoying their experience here." Ethan nodded slowly, his patience wearing thin. He glanced around the room, noticing a few other diners watching the scene unfold, their eyes filled with curiosity, and he realized with some relief, even sympathy. It seemed that Karen's behavior wasn't going unnoticed, and he found some comfort in that fact. He took another deep breath, then looked back at Karen. "If you want everyone to enjoy their experience here, "Perhaps you could start by treating my family with the same respect you show the other guests," he said, his voice steady but filled with quiet strength. "We're here to have a meal, just like everyone else. That's all we ask for." Karen's face flushed slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing her expression. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, a voice called out from a nearby table. "He's right, you know. We've been watching how you're treating them, and it's not right." Ethan turned, surprised, to see an older couple sitting a few tables away. The woman, a kind-looking lady with silver hair and glasses, was looking directly at Karen, her expression one of disapproval. Her husband nodded beside her, crossing his arms as he looked up at Karen with a frown. Karen's face paled slightly, clearly taken aback by the unexpected intervention. She glanced around, realizing that other diners were watching her as well, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to outright disapproval. The young employee beside her looked as if he wanted to disappear, his face reddening as he shuffled his feet. For the first time, Karen seemed to falter. Her confidence wavered, and she cast a quick glance at Ethan, as if calculating her next move. But instead of backing down, she straightened her shoulders, her expression hardening as she looked back at the elderly couple. "I assure you, ma'am, I'm simply trying to maintain the standards of this establishment," she said, her voice cold. "We have every right to ensure that all our guests feel comfortable." The woman raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Comfortable? I think you're the one making everyone uncomfortable with your behavior," she replied sharply. "These people are just here to have a meal with their family. I don't see why you need to single them out like this." Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, mixed with a sense of quiet validation. He wasn't alone in seeing Karen's hostility, and knowing that others had noticed too lifted some of the weight off his shoulders. He looked over at Lena, who gave him a small, relieved smile, squeezing his hand in silent encouragement. Karen's jaw clenched, her face flushed with frustration. She glanced around, clearly realizing that she was losing control of the situation. After a long, tense pause, she forced a tight smile and turned back to Ethan. "Well," she said, her voice brittle, "if there's nothing else, please enjoy the rest of your meal." Without waiting for a response, she turned abruptly and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she disappeared into the back of the restaurant. Ethan watched her go, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering tension. The young employee lingered for a moment, looking at him with an apologetic expression before muttering a quiet, "sorry," and hurrying off after Karen. Ethan sighed, feeling some of the weight finally lift from his chest as he looked back at his family. Their kids were watching him with wide eyes, clearly unsure of what to make of the situation. Ethan forced a smile, trying to ease their worries. "Everything's all right," he said gently, reaching out to pat his son's shoulder. "We're here to enjoy our evening, remember?" Lena smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride and warmth. "You handled that perfectly," she whispered, leaning over to give him a quick kiss on the cheek. Ethan felt his heart swell with gratitude for her steady presence, her unwavering support that had seen him through countless challenges. The older woman at the nearby table caught his eye, giving him a warm, encouraging smile. She raised her glass slightly in a gesture of solidarity, and Ethan nodded in thanks, feeling an unexpected surge of gratitude for the stranger's kindness. As they finished their meal, the atmosphere seemed to shift. Karen was nowhere in sight, and the rest of the staff treated them with courtesy, even warmth. The tension that had clung to them all evening finally began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of quiet triumph. They had come here for a peaceful meal, and despite everything, they had managed to hold onto their dignity and enjoy their time together. When the check arrived, Ethan took it with a quiet smile, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. The evening hadn't gone as planned, but they had faced the challenges together, and that meant more to him than anything. As they stood to leave, he noticed a few of the other patrons watching them with smiles and nods of respect. It was a small gesture, but it carried a profound weight, reminding him that, even in difficult moments, there were still people who understood, who cared. As they made their way to the door, the hostess from earlier approached them, a sympathetic smile on her face. "I'm so sorry about everything tonight," she murmured, looking genuinely apologetic. "Please know that not all of us feel that way." Ethan nodded, appreciating her words. "Thank you," he replied softly. "We understand." They stepped out into the night, the cool air filling Ethan's lungs as he looked up at the stars beginning to the sky. The world felt a little heavier, but he felt a renewed sense of resilience and pride. His children ran ahead, laughing and playing, blissfully unaware of the challenges their parents had just faced. Ethan reached for Lena's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze as they walked together, side by side, into the night. As they walked toward the parking lot, the laughter of their children echoed in the cool evening air, a reminder of the simple joy that family could bring even in the face of adversity. Ethan let the warmth of their excitement wash over him, allowing it to push away the lingering tension from the restaurant. With each step, he felt more grounded, the stresses of the evening fading into the background, replaced by the more pressing concern of ensuring his kids felt loved and secure. His daughter, with her small frame, raced ahead, her bright pink dress flaring out as she twirled, feeling the freedom of the open space. "Can we get ice cream on the way home?" she called back, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. Ethan chuckled at her boundless energy, feeling a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. "Of course." Lena chimed in, catching up to their daughter. "As long as your brother helps pick out the flavors." Ethan watched them, his heart swelling with affection. He had grown to cherish moments like these, unfiltered joy and laughter that reminded him of why they fought against the darker moments in life. He loved seeing Lena interact with their children, the way her eyes sparkled as she encouraged them to express their ideas and dreams. It was a comforting reminder that despite the challenges they faced as a family, they were built on love, trust, and a shared commitment to uplift one another. As they reached their car, Ethan fished out the keys from his pocket, the familiar jingle sounding almost soothing after the chaos they had just experienced. He opened the door for his family, ushering them in as the kids climbed into the back seat, chattering excitedly about the ice cream flavors they hoped to find. "I want chocolate chip cookie dough," his son shouted, his voice laced with determination. "I want strawberry," his daughter countered, folding her arms defiantly as if to assert her claim on the best flavor. Ethan chuckled as he slid into the driver's seat, shaking his head at their banter. "Okay, how about we get both? You can share." The kids squealed with delight, momentarily forgetting the earlier tension, and Ethan turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, reflecting on the earlier confrontation. Despite the anger he had felt in the restaurant, he was proud of how he handled it. His family had seen him stand tall, and for that he felt a sense of accomplishment. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Lena reached over, resting her hand on his knee. "You were incredible tonight," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You didn't let her get to you." "I'm so proud of how you handled everything." Ethan felt warmth spread through him at her words. "Thanks, babe. I wanted to make sure the kids didn't see me lose my cool. It's important for them to know that they can handle tough situations with dignity." Lena nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know. And they saw that. You showed them how to stand up for themselves without losing who they are." They drove in comfortable silence for a moment, the hum of the engine and the sounds of their kids in the back creating a soothing atmosphere. Ethan glanced at Lena, his heart swelling with gratitude for her presence, her unwavering support. She was the anchor in his life, grounding him in the face of stormy seas. As they neared the ice cream shop, Ethan felt a sense of excitement bubbling up within him, a stark contrast to the frustration of earlier. "You guys ready for some ice cream?" he called back to the kids, who responded with an enthusiastic cheer. When they arrived at the shop, the neon lights glowed brightly against the darkening sky, illuminating the faces of other families enjoying their treats. The air was filled with the sweet smell of waffle cones and the sound of laughter, a stark reminder of the simple pleasures that made life so beautiful. Ethan stepped out of the car, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation coursing through him. They made their way to the counter, where the young attendant greeted them with a bright smile. "What can I get for you today?" she asked cheerfully. His daughter immediately bounced on her toes, her eyes wide with excitement. "I want strawberry," she exclaimed. "Cookie dough for me." His son chimed in, practically bouncing with glee. Ethan and Lena exchanged amused glances, both of them enjoying the sheer joy radiating from their children. "All right, So that's 1 strawberry and 1 cookie dough, Ethan said, looking at the attendant. And for us, we'll take 2 cones, please. 1 with chocolate fudge and 1 with vanilla. The attendant quickly filled their order, and as she handed over the cones, Ethan could see the sheer happiness on his kids' faces. He watched as they took their cones, their eyes lighting up as if they had just been handed a treasure. "Thank you," they chorused in unison, and the attendant laughed, clearly charmed by their enthusiasm. They found a small table outside, the evening air cool and refreshing against their skin. Ethan took a deep breath, allowing himself to relax as he watched his kids dive into their ice cream, their laughter ringing through the air like music. For that moment, the challenges of the evening faded away. Ethan glanced at Lena, and she smiled back at him, her eyes shining with warmth. "See? This is what it's all about," she said softly. "These little moments that make everything worth it." Ethan nodded, feeling grateful for this slice of normalcy amid a world that often felt chaotic. "Absolutely," he replied, savoring the taste of chocolate fudge that he had just taken a bite of. "It's the moments like these that remind us what we're fighting for." Their children continued to chatter about their favorite ice cream flavors and what they wanted to do next. It was a beautiful contrast to the earlier tension, and Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He was reminded that while the world outside was sometimes harsh, they could always find solace in their family unit. After they finished their ice cream, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow around them. Ethan felt a sense of peace wash over him, a momentary reprieve from the challenges they faced as a family. But even as the warmth enveloped him, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the world outside their bubble was still fraught with tensions that could emerge at any moment. Lena leaned back in her chair, stretching slightly. "What do you think the kids will remember about tonight?" she mused, glancing over at Ethan. Ethan smiled, taking a moment to consider. "I hope they remember the ice cream and the laughter more than anything else. I want them to know that no matter what happens, we stick together." Lena nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "And that they can face anything with their heads held high," she added, her voice filled with conviction. They spent a few more moments chatting and enjoying the evening air, allowing the weight of the day to dissipate. As the sky began to darken, they decided it was time to head home. Ethan helped his children into the car, their voices filled with excitement as they recounted their favorite parts of the evening. As he drove, he felt a sense of pride wash over him. They had navigated the challenges of the night with grace and dignity. He glanced over at Lena, who was watching him with a soft smile, and he felt a surge of gratitude for her presence in his life. They had created a safe space for their family, one filled with love, understanding, and resilience. As they approached their home, the familiar sights of their neighborhood enveloped them. The streetlights flickered on, casting a warm glow on the sidewalks, and Ethan felt a sense of relief as they turned into their driveway. After parking, they all piled out of the car, and Ethan took a moment to breathe in the familiar sense of home, the faint smell of grass, the crisp evening air, and the lingering sweetness of ice cream. It felt comforting and safe, a sanctuary against the world outside. "All right, everyone. Time for a family game night," he announced, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Yay!" His kids cheered, their earlier tension completely forgotten as they rushed toward the front door, eager to escape into their cozy haven. Inside, they gathered in the living room, settling onto the soft carpet. Lena pulled out a board game from the shelf, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Let's see who can win this time," she said, her playful competitive spirit shining through. Ethan chuckled, feeling the warmth of camaraderie envelop them as they set up the game. "I'm ready to lose," he joked, though he knew he would give it his all. As they played, the laughter filled their home, a sound that resonated deeply within Ethan's heart. He watched his kids interact, their joy infectious, and felt an overwhelming sense of love for them. Each laugh, each playful jab, was a reminder of the beauty of family, the strength they found in each other. But even as he enjoyed the moment, Ethan couldn't help but think of the challenges that still lay ahead. The encounter with Karen had stirred something within him, a reminder that not everyone would treat them with kindness. But rather than feeling defeated, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would continue to stand tall, to support one another, and to fight against the injustices they faced together. As the evening wore on, Ethan felt fatigue start to creep in, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from a day filled with love and connection. Eventually, they wrapped up the game and Ethan ushered the kids off to bed, their laughter still echoing in the hallways. Once the house was quiet, Ethan and Lena sat on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light over them. "Today was a lot," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair, letting out a deep breath. Lena nodded, her expression serious but filled with understanding. "There was. But we made it through. Together." "Yeah," Ethan replied, feeling the weight of her words. "And I think we need to keep talking about these issues, not just for us but for our kids too. They need to know how to navigate the world." Lena leaned in closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "I agree. It's essential for them to understand the reality they live in. But we'll teach them how to face it with strength and grace, just like you did tonight." Ethan smiled, feeling grateful for her unwavering support and strength. "Thanks for always being my partner in this. I couldn't do it without you." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the world feeling lighter now, buoyed by their shared commitment to one another and their family. In that moment, Ethan realized that while challenges would come, they were resilient enough to face anything together. As they prepared for bed, Ethan felt a sense of hope settle within him. He had seen the worst of humanity today, but he had also witnessed the beauty of family and the strength of love. And as long as they remained united, he knew they could face whatever the world threw at them. As he lay in bed, Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the rhythmic sound of Lena's breathing beside him. He drifted off to sleep with the sound of laughter still echoing in his mind, the warmth of their family's love wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. The world outside might be filled with challenges, but within their home, they had created a sanctuary of love, resilience, and hope. And in the quiet of the night, Ethan dreamed of a brighter future, one where his children could thrive, unencumbered by hate and prejudice, surrounded by love and understanding. Tomorrow would be another day, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but for now, he was content to rest, knowing that they would face whatever came next, together. As dawn broke the following day, the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow across the bedroom. Ethan stirred, awakening to the soft sounds of birds chirping outside, a gentle reminder that the world kept turning despite the turmoil they had faced. He opened his eyes, momentarily blinking against the light before glancing over at Lena, still peacefully asleep beside him. With a contented sigh, he slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb her, and padded softly to the kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee brewing filled the air, a comforting scent that promised a good start to the day. Ethan poured himself a cup, relishing the warmth of the mug in his hands. As he took his first sip, he couldn't shake the events of the previous night from his mind. The confrontation with the restaurant manager had stirred something within him, igniting a fire that urged him to take action. He felt a sense of urgency to address not only the personal affront they had faced but the broader issues of racism and injustice that persisted in society. After finishing his coffee, he turned his attention to breakfast. He decided to make pancakes, a family favorite, as a way to bring some joy to the morning. As he mixed the batter, he reflected on how simple acts of love, like cooking for his family, were a way to combat the hate he had encountered. It was in these moments of connection that they found their strength. The sound of small footsteps approached, and Ethan turned to see his son, Jason, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Dad," he exclaimed, his voice still thick with sleep. "Morning, buddy. Want some pancakes?" Ethan replied, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah. Can I help?" Jason asked eagerly, his excitement palpable. "Of course. Come here and stir this for me," Ethan said, handing over the mixing bowl. Together, they stirred the batter, and Ethan felt a wave of happiness wash over him as they shared this moment. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, they could create moments of joy and connection. Soon, Lena joined them, her hair tousled and a sleepy smile on her face. "What's going on in here?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Making pancakes," Jason announced proudly. "I'm helping." "That's amazing." I can't wait to taste them, Lena said, leaning down to give her son a quick kiss on the head before settling at the kitchen table, ready to enjoy the meal. As the aroma of pancakes filled the air, Ethan flipped them onto plates, each golden brown disc a symbol of their resilience. He plated up the food, adding fresh strawberries and a drizzle of syrup, before bringing the feast to the table. Breakfast is served, he announced, and the kids cheered, their faces lighting up with anticipation. They gathered around the table, laughter and chatter filling the air as they dug into the pancakes. Ethan watched as Lena interacted with the children, her laughter mingling with theirs. In that moment, he felt a sense of normalcy and peace wash over him, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the previous night. As they finished their breakfast, Ethan felt a determination brewing within him. "You know, I think we need to talk about what happened yesterday," he said, his voice steady. Lena looked at him, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "You're right. It's important for the kids to know what to do when they face situations like that," she replied. Jason looked up, his eyes wide with curiosity. "What happened?" he asked. Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Well, we went to a restaurant, and the manager wasn't nice to us because of the color of our skin. It wasn't right, and we have to understand that some people act that way." "Why would she do that?" Jason asked, his voice filled with confusion and a hint of sadness. Ethan exchanged a glance with Lena, her eyes reflecting a mixture of emotions. Sometimes, people don't understand that everyone deserves respect and kindness, no matter what they look like. But it's important that we stand up for ourselves and each other, Ethan explained. Lena nodded, adding, "And we need to teach you both to treat everyone with kindness, regardless of their background. That's how we can make a difference." Their daughter, Ava, who had been listening intently, piped up. "But what if someone is mean to us? What do we do?" Ethan smiled at her bravery in asking the question. "If someone is mean to you, it's okay to stand up for yourself. But always remember to do it with dignity. You can walk away or ask for help if you feel unsafe. And no matter what happens, always come to us," he said, his heart swelling with pride at their willingness to engage in such an important conversation. Jason nodded, clearly processing the information. "I'll be brave like you were, Dad," he declared, puffing out his chest proudly. "That's the spirit," Ethan said, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude that they could discuss these issues openly as a family. "But being brave doesn't mean you have to fight. It means standing up for what's right, even if it's hard." As they wrapped up breakfast, the weight of their conversation lingered in the air, but it felt lighter now. They had created a safe space to talk about difficult topics, a foundation of love and understanding that would support them through whatever challenges lay ahead. After breakfast, the family cleaned up together, sharing laughs and silly jokes. As Ethan washed the dishes, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that confronting the issues they faced as a family was vital, but he also wanted to extend that conversation beyond their home. Once the dishes were done, he turned to Lena. "I think we should do something. Maybe reach out to the community or look into organizations that focus on promoting understanding and equality," he suggested, his voice filled with determination. "I love that idea," Lena said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "We could organize something, like a community event or a workshop. It would be a great way to bring people together and talk about these issues." Ethan felt a rush of excitement at the thought. We could invite local speakers, share stories, and create a space for discussion. It's important for people to feel heard and understood. "Let's brainstorm ideas tonight after the kids go to bed," Lena said, her voice filled with energy. "We can make a plan and start reaching out to people?" "Sounds perfect," Ethan replied, feeling invigorated by the prospect of turning their frustration into action. "I want our kids to see that they can be a part of change, that they can use their voices to make a difference." With that resolve in mind, the day unfolded in a blur of activity. They spent the morning at the park, enjoying the sunshine and letting their kids run free. As Ethan watched Jason and Ava playing, their laughter ringing out into the crisp air, he felt a sense of joy wash over him. These were the moments that reminded him of the beauty in life, the small victories that made every challenge worthwhile. As they returned home, Ethan and Lena began to discuss their ideas further. They made a list of potential speakers and activities for their planned community event, the excitement between them palpable as they envisioned the impact it could have. They wanted to create a space for dialogue, where people could come together to share their experiences and learn from one another. After a busy evening, they finally settled into the couch, the kids tucked away in their beds. The house was quiet, and they could feel the weight of the day settling around them. "I'm really excited about this," Lena said, her eyes bright. "It feels good to have a plan." Ethan nodded in agreement. "It really does. It's empowering to think about how we can turn our experiences into something positive." As they prepared to go to sleep, Ethan felt a renewed sense of hope. He had seen the worst of humanity the night before, but now he was filled with the belief that they could make a difference. It was a small step, but every journey began with one, and he was ready to take it. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about the conversations they would have, the connections they would forge, and the impact they could create together as a family. The world was still filled with challenges, but they would face them head-on, united in their commitment to make it a better place for everyone. In the days that followed, Ethan and Lena worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They reached out to community leaders, organizations, and local activists, sharing their story and inviting them to participate in the event. Slowly, the pieces began to come together. They secured a community center as the venue and set a date. They designed flyers, organized workshops, and created a safe space for open dialogue. The momentum built, and Ethan felt a surge of hope as they watched their plans unfold. As the day of the event approached, they could feel the excitement in the air. They had rallied their friends and family, and a sense of anticipation hung over the community. Ethan felt proud to be part of something bigger than himself, something that had the potential to create change. On the day of the event, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the community center. As people began to arrive, Ethan stood at the entrance, welcoming each person with a smile. He felt a sense of pride swell within him as he watched a diverse group of individuals gather, all coming together to engage in important conversations. The day unfolded with a series of panels, discussions, and interactive workshops. People shared their stories, their struggles, and their hopes for a better future. Ethan felt inspired by the resilience and strength that filled the room. There was an undeniable energy, a collective determination to foster understanding and compassion. As the event progressed, Ethan found himself immersed in conversations, listening to others and sharing his experiences. He realized that while they had faced their own struggles, there were countless others who had endured far more. It was a humbling experience, one that reminded him of the power of community and solidarity. As the day came to a close, Ethan took a moment to reflect. He looked around at the smiling faces, the new friendships formed, and the bonds created through shared experiences. This was the change they had hoped for, a sense of belonging and understanding that transcended differences. Lena joined him, her face alight with joy. "We did it, Ethan. Look at all these people coming together," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. "We did," he agreed, feeling a sense of fulfillment wash over him. "This is just the beginning. We can keep this going, continue these conversations, and create more events." They embraced, knowing that their journey was far from over. They would continue to advocate for change, to educate their children about the importance of empathy and understanding, and to stand up against injustice. As they drove home that evening, the car filled with the chatter of their kids, Ethan couldn't help but feel grateful. They had turned their pain into purpose, and in doing so, had created a legacy of love and resilience. In the weeks that followed, they continued to organize events, and their efforts sparked a movement within their community. More and more people began to engage in discussions about race, privilege, and the importance of empathy. Ethan realized that change was possible, one conversation at a time. And as he lay in bed each night, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together, united in their commitment to fostering understanding and compassion in a world that desperately needed it. Ethan understood that the battle against racism and injustice would be ongoing, but he also knew that they had the power to effect change, to raise their voices, and to stand up for what was right. With each passing day, he felt more empowered, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead, confident that love and resilience would guide their way. In the quiet moments before sleep, he reflected on the lessons learned, the bonds formed, and the community they had built. Together, they had created a sanctuary of hope, where love triumphed over hate, and where the future could be brighter for generations to come. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, replaced by the warmth of family, love, and the unwavering belief that together they could make a difference. As the weeks rolled by, Ethan and Lena poured their hearts into their community initiatives. The momentum from the previous event had sparked something profound in the hearts of many, and they felt a growing sense of unity within the community. One evening, as they sat together after a long day of planning the next event, Ethan turned to Lena, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, it's amazing how much we've accomplished in such a short time. But sometimes, I wonder if we're making a real impact." Lena smiled softly, understanding his concerns. "Change takes time, Ethan. We're planting seeds right now. Some might not sprout immediately, but they will in time. Every conversation, every person who feels empowered to speak up, is a step in the right direction." Ethan nodded, appreciating her optimism but still feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I just wish there was a way to reach more people, to share our message beyond our community. I want to ensure that our children and others know that love and understanding can triumph over hate." Lena considered this, her brow furrowing slightly. "What if we reached out to schools? We could create educational programs that promote awareness and empathy. Children are our future, after all." "That's a fantastic idea," Ethan replied, his enthusiasm growing. "We could work with teachers to integrate these discussions into their curriculum. And we could organize workshops for parents, too. The more people understand, the more they can help foster a culture of kindness." That night, they mapped out their plans, excited by the prospect of reaching a broader audience. They envisioned workshops, discussions, and educational materials that could be shared with local schools, creating a ripple effect of understanding and compassion throughout their community. As they worked tirelessly over the next few weeks, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew they were on the right path, and each step brought them closer to their goal. They reached out to educators, shared their vision, and before long, several schools expressed interest in collaborating. On the day of their first workshop, the energy in the air was electric. Ethan stood in front of a group of parents and teachers, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "We're here to talk about the importance of fostering understanding and empathy in our children, especially in a world that can sometimes be filled with hate." As he spoke, he shared personal stories, including the incident at the restaurant that had spurred their journey. He could see the audience's reactions, some nodding in agreement, others looking contemplative. It was clear that this was a conversation many were eager to have. Throughout the workshop, discussions flowed freely, and Ethan felt the weight of the previous weeks lift from his shoulders. People were engaged, sharing their experiences, asking questions, and seeking ways to implement change in their own homes. It was a powerful reminder of the impact they could have together. As the session wrapped up, Ethan felt a sense of hope blossoming within him. He had witnessed firsthand the willingness of others to engage in difficult conversations, and it reaffirmed his belief that change was possible. In the weeks that followed, the workshops gained popularity, and more schools joined the initiative. Ethan and Lena became known in the community not just as advocates for change but as catalysts for discussions that had long been avoided. They held events at libraries, community centers, and even virtually, reaching families who might not have been able to attend in person. However, not everything was smooth sailing. They faced resistance from some community members who were uncomfortable with the discussions surrounding race and privilege. At times, Ethan felt disheartened by the negativity, but Lena was always there to lift him up. "It's okay to feel frustrated," she reassured him one evening after a particularly challenging meeting. "But remember, not everyone will understand right away. It's our job to keep pushing forward and educating, even when it's hard." Ethan took her words to heart. He realized that change often came with resistance, and that he and Lena were committed to standing firm in their beliefs. They continued to engage with the community, creating a safe space for dialogue and fostering connections with those who were willing to listen. As summer approached, they decided to host a larger community event, a family-friendly festival that celebrated diversity and inclusion. They envisioned it as a day filled with food, music, activities, and discussions that would bring everyone together. The planning was intense, but the excitement was palpable. They reached out to local businesses, artists, and speakers, gathering support from the community. As the festival day drew closer, Ethan couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Finally, the day arrived and the park was alive with energy. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, booths lined the pathways, and laughter echoed through the air. Ethan looked around at the families enjoying themselves, feeling a sense of pride swell in his chest. As he moved through the crowd, he saw familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even people he had met at the workshops. They were all there, coming together to celebrate and learn. The event featured various activities, from art stations for children to informative panels discussing race and equality. As Ethan facilitated discussions, he felt the same excitement he had experienced during their initial workshops. People were engaging, sharing, and connecting. Lena floated around, capturing moments on her camera, her smile radiant as she spoke with attendees. Ethan caught a glimpse of their children running around, laughter spilling from their lips as they played with new friends. In the midst of it all, he noticed a group of teenagers gathered at a booth where they were painting a large mural together. The mural depicted a vibrant tapestry of hands in various skin tones, intertwined and reaching out to one another. Ethan approached, watching as the teens worked together, their laughter mingling with conversations around them. It was a beautiful representation of what they had been striving for, a visual reminder of unity in diversity. One of the teens looked up, noticing Ethan's presence. "Hey, Mr. Ethan, come help us," she called, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Ethan chuckled, stepping forward. "Sure, I'd love to." He picked up a brush, and as they painted together, he felt a sense of connection to this new generation, a hope for the future. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, the festival culminated in a shared moment of reflection. Ethan gathered everyone together, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. Today was about more than just fun. It was about understanding and coming together as a community. We are stronger together, and I believe we can create lasting change. The crowd erupted in applause, and in that moment, Ethan felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had created a space for dialogue, understanding, and connection. It was a testament to their hard work, dedication, and the power of community. As the event wrapped up, Ethan and Lena stood together, watching the families leave with smiles on their faces, hearts full of hope. "We did it," Lena said, leaning into Ethan's side. "I can't believe how far we've come." Ethan smiled back, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "And this is just the beginning. We'll keep pushing forward, keep having these conversations, and keep advocating for love and understanding." As they gathered their things and prepared to head home, Ethan realized that while the journey had been filled with challenges, it had also been filled with hope, love, and connection. He had witnessed the power of community, the importance of standing up for what was right, and the necessity of fostering understanding. As he and Lena drove home, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready to continue this fight, to ensure that his children and future generations would inherit a world where love triumphed over hate. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Ethan reflected on the day. The sounds of laughter and joy still echoed in his mind, a reminder of the impact they had made. He thought about the conversations still to come, the relationships to be built, and the barriers to be broken down. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of Lena beside him. He had seen the worst of humanity, but he had also witnessed the best. And he knew that as long as they continued to stand together, they could face anything. In his heart, he felt a deep sense of peace. They were not just a family, they were part of something bigger, part of a movement toward understanding and compassion. And that was a legacy worth fighting for. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, he was content. He drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the love of his family, dreaming of a future filled with hope, connection, and the promise of a better tomorrow. As the dawn broke on a new day, Ethan awoke with a sense of purpose. The world outside was still filled with challenges, but within his home, he had created a sanctuary of love, resilience, and hope. Together with Lena, they would continue to fight for a better future, one step at a time, fueled by the unwavering belief that love could change the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the park where the festival had been held, Ethan sat on the porch of his home, reflecting on the day's events. The laughter of children echoed in the background as his own kids played in the yard, a sight that filled him with joy and pride. Yet, amidst the happiness, a feeling of unease began to creep in. The journey they had embarked upon was far from over. Despite the progress they had made, Ethan knew that there were still many battles to fight. The community was still divided, and the challenges of racism and intolerance were far from eradicated. As he stared into the distance, he recalled the resistance they had faced from some members of the community. There were still those who clung to outdated beliefs, who refused to see the value in understanding and empathy. Ethan's heart sank at the thought that, despite their efforts, not everyone was on board with the changes they sought to implement. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a notification from the community group's social media page. They had just posted a video highlighting the festival's success, filled with clips of smiling families, laughter, and the vibrant mural painted by the teens. As he clicked to watch, a familiar sense of hope surged within him. The video ended with a call to action. If you believe in the power of community and love, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your voice matters, and together, we can make a difference. Ethan smiled at the message, feeling the urgency in those words. He knew that the fight against ignorance and hate would continue, but it would take all of them, united, to create lasting change. We need to keep this momentum going, he thought, determination swelling within him. Turning to Lena, who had just stepped outside with a glass of lemonade, he shared his thoughts. What if we launched a campaign encouraging people to share their own stories? Personal experiences about overcoming prejudice or moments of connection could help bridge the divide. Lena's eyes lit up with excitement. That's brilliant. We can use social media to amplify voices that often go unheard. We can encourage our followers to comment and share their experiences. Each story could be a step toward fostering understanding. With renewed energy, they brainstormed ideas, envisioning a series of posts featuring different members of the community sharing their experiences. Each post would conclude with a call to action, like, share, and subscribe to help us spread the message of love and unity. Your story matters, and together, we can inspire change. As they crafted the campaign, Ethan felt a sense of purpose wash over him. This was more than just a social media initiative. It was an opportunity to build connections, to create a platform where voices could be heard, and to foster a community of empathy and understanding. Days turned into weeks as they launched their campaign, and soon stories began pouring in. People from all walks of life shared their experiences, moments of connection that defied stereotypes, stories of overcoming adversity, and tales of unity in diversity. Each post was met with heartfelt comments, shares, and a growing community that rallied around the message. Ethan and Lena watched as their efforts began to bear fruit. The community started to come together, engaging in discussions that had once been uncomfortable. People began to understand the importance of listening, of hearing the stories of others, and recognizing the shared humanity that bound them together. One evening, as they reviewed the campaign's progress, Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Look at what we've accomplished," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "We've created a space for people to share, to connect, and to heal. It's a testament to the power of community." Lena smiled, squeezing his hand. "And it's just the beginning. We can continue to build on this, to foster understanding in every corner of our community. We can challenge those who resist change and show them the beauty of compassion." As they sat together, surrounded by the warmth of their home, Ethan knew that the journey ahead would still be filled with challenges. But he also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, their family, and a growing community that stood together for love and understanding. And so, as the night deepened, Ethan made a silent promise to himself and to those around him. They would continue to fight against hate, to share their stories, and to encourage others to do the same. They would use their voices to amplify the message of unity, and they would remind everyone that together they could make a difference. As the stars twinkled above, he felt a sense of hope for the future. The road ahead might be long, but with love, resilience, and the power of community, they would continue to shine a light in the darkness. And as always, he hoped that everyone watching and listening would take a moment to reflect on their own experiences. To like, share, and subscribe to the journey of understanding and compassion, because together they could foster change that would echo through generations to come. Ethan looked out into the night, a smile gracing his lips. This was their story, a story of resilience, love, and the unwavering belief that together they could create a brighter future for all.